Hey guys, welcome back to Singing Creek Farm. I am Danielle Upshaw and I am excited to make tortillas with you today with freshly milled flour. In case you are just jumping to this video after not seeing the earlier ones in the series, we are making all products with freshly milled flour out of my cookbook, The Freshly Milled Kitchen. If you want to go check it out, it is on my website, singingcreekfarm.com. Just go over to the shop page and you will find it there as an ebook. As soon as you pay, you're going to be given a download link on that same page, and you can download it and have it instantly ready to go. Freshly milled flour contains 40 of the 44 nutrients required to sustain human life, and you cannot get this with store-bought flour. If you want to see why and a little bit of the history of flour, I'm going to have a link to the video I did about that in the description down below. But enough jabbering from me, let's get going on making these tortillas. For tortillas, you would normally use an all-purpose flour, which means we are going to be using our soft white wheat berries. You could also use the soft red wheat berries if you would like to, or even spelt for this. But if it's your first time, I would recommend using the white wheat variety because it's going to be a flavor you're a little bit more used to. It can also be easier to work with. Trying to figure out the right angles for this camera in this new kitchen. Ignore my pot filler. We have had a lot of issues with the quality of workmanship on our new house, so who knows when that will get fixed. This is the Nutrimill Harvest grain mill. You do not have to have this grain mill, but you need to have a grain mill in order to mill your wheat berries. So now I put in my wheat berries. For this recipe, you need 2 cups of wheat berries. If you watch my other videos, you know that doing an autolyze, which is a point in which you take a break in the recipe and let it rest so that the flour can absorb the moisture. Well, in this recipe, there's not a lot of moisture, and the moisture we do add is temperature sensitive, which is water later in the recipe. So we are actually going to let this autolyze with the lard. So we are going to add 1/2 cup of lard to just a small bowl. This does not make a huge amount of dough, so you do not need a huge mixing bowl. You can also use vegetable shortening or tallow if you do not have lard, but I feel like lard, which is the fat from pigs, makes the best fat for this recipe, but it's not going to make like some massive difference. All right, so we've got our lard in here. I'm now going to add our flour. I don't need to measure it now because I already measured it going into the wheat mill. All right, so I am now going to use just a fork. If you have a pastry knife, you can use that as well. I do have one, but I want to show you all how simple a lot of this stuff is. So anytime I can take the easier route to whatever equipment I think the average Joe has in their kitchen, that's going to be what I do. So I'm just in a cutting motion going to stir this together until it gets this really like crumbly look to it. I like to even just get into it with my hands. I should have taken my ring off, but I forgot. And we're just gonna crumble it all together. I'm just essentially trying to separate the big chunks while dusting it with flour. Okay, I've made a little bit of a mess here, but this is kind of what you're going for. You want it to just be this really crumbly flour texture. I'm now going to wash my hands and cover this with some saran wrap. And even if you can just let it rest for 10 minutes, that would be great. But optimally, you're looking at about 30 minutes here. All right. So I'm just going to cover this and then I will let it sit, go get some chores done or something, and come back. Our tortillas have finished their autolyze process. So now we can go ahead and finish them up. So to our flour and lard mixture, we are now going to add some baking powder. Let me double check my notes. I want to tell you the right thing. So this is 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and this is our leavening agent. And had we already put this in and the water helped activate it, then it could have lost its lift while we let it autolyze. So that's why we didn't already add it. And then we are also adding a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So before I add any water, I'm just going to use my fork to kind of mix that in. And another thing I got ready is I said the hot water. So I've got 1 cup of hot water right here. It's as hot as my tap water gets. I have 1 cup of that. And then I also went ahead and milled just a little more flour to use to dust this as we form the tortillas. And then on my wooden cutting board, I also have a damp kitchen towel. You really don't want this mixture to start to dry out after we form the tortillas. So I am going to be covering them with a damp cloth as I work on the other ones. One thing I've seen a lot of people do as well is literally just roll them out as they're cooking them. So that's another way to do it. So you may not use all of your hot water, but I want you to just use a little bit at a time. I'm gonna use half of it to start, and I'm gonna forego the fork and just already go in with my hands. I took my ring off. And the goal is to add water just until you can form this into a really nice dough ball, but you don't want it to feel wet, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna add just a touch more water. I think that has me at 3 1/4 cup. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn this out. And this is a softer dough, so we actually do not really have to knead it that much. I am just going to knead it for maybe like 3 minutes, just until it has fully combined. And you'll see a difference. You just want a little bit of that gluten buildup, and it's really just to fully mix everything together. Okay, so I've gotten to the texture that I would like to get to. It's not quite as crumbly as it was before. It's more of a dough ball now than it was when I first got started. It like actually wants to come together. And so that's the spot that I want it to be at. So this recipe makes 10 8-inch tortillas. I could bring out my dough scale, weigh this, and then divide that number by 10 and weigh each individual dough ball to make sure they're all the exact same size. Hey, hold on, mommy is doing this, okay? Okay, good job. Thanks for getting the eggs. But I am lazy. And so instead, I like to roll this into a log and then figure out 5 equal parts. Okay, and then because I hadn't cut all the way, I can move it a little if I need to. But then I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna actually cut it. So now I have 5 relatively equal parts. And now I'm then just gonna go in and cut each of those into halves. And then that way I will end up with 10. All right, so I've got 1 left, so I'm gonna go ahead and cover these with my damp kitchen towel. So now I'm going to go ahead, roll this final one into a ball. Ta-da! And so I'm just going to take some of this flour I milled and lightly dust my countertop. And then if you have a tortilla press, by all means use it. I just don't have one. And I'm trying to show you all how to do this with the simplest methods possible. So I am going to just start to lightly roll this and then do quarter turns. And then if it starts to stick to either the counter or my rolling pin, then I am going to just dust a tad more flour. And I'm going to keep going until it's about 8 inches, which would be about a 1/4 inch to 1/8 of an inch. And because I don't have a tortilla press, it is not going to be a perfect circle, but it'll be homemade. You know, here's my philosophy. If it's too perfect, they'll think you bought it, okay? And we don't want to go to all of this effort just for someone to think that we bought this at the store. So, you know, add a few little imperfections here and there. And so that way people will be like, man, she made this from scratch. So I've got my tortilla. I'm just going to dust it a little extra because I don't want it sticking to the other tortillas. So I am now going to lay this on my cutting board and then drape the towel back over it. And then that way both the dough balls and the rolled out tortillas are constantly covered by a little bit of moisture. And so now I am going to just roll out all 10 of the tortillas. Okay, so I've gotten all of the tortillas rolled out now, and I'm gonna keep them covered with the damp cloth, and we're gonna come over to the stove so we can cook them. I'm gonna try to figure out this camera angle so you can see what's happening. My favorite way to cook tortillas is with a cast iron skillet. If you do not have one of these, just any skillet will work, but this is my most recommended method. I'm gonna put it on medium-high heat. We want this to be pretty hot so they can cook quickly. I'm also gonna go ahead and get a plate ready so I can put them on there when I am done. All right, we're getting hot, so I'm gonna turn it down just a little. All right, I'm gonna lightly spray this with olive oil just to get us going. Our first tortilla, oops, tore it a little bit, so I'm just gonna pinch it. And I'm going to put it on there to cook. And again, I am making sure to keep all of these covered while the other ones are cooking. This one's my favorite so far. Look at all the bubbles. How fun. All right, let's flip it. I am not left-handed. Here they are all done. I am probably about to go and make some quesadillas with these because it's about 5 o'clock and my kids are hungry. Thanks again for watching. I hope you all learned something today. Please let me know if you give this a try. And once again, I have all of the links and descriptions for everything I mentioned in this video down in the description below. Happy baking!